Okay, folks, if I can ask the facilitators, we're going to open the questions. We're going to open the panel now. Everybody, if I can ask you to revert to your table, please. And we're going to kick straight off. Okay, facilitators, please, can we get everybody back in action? Thank you. So we're joined back at the panel again. Thanks for Thomas first. Caroline, can we get going, please? We're joined back at the table. We're joined back at the panel with Thomas and Owen is still here as well to handle your questions and answers. So like yesterday, thanks for loading up the questions straight away. Folks, and I'm going to go straight in, and it's Maura on table 7, I think, is a question related to human rights. Please.
What are the consequences?
Just 1 second, Maura, we get your mic.
Thank you. What are the consequences of breaching people's human rights regarding sufficient quality of health care related to helping people struggling with drug use?
Thomas, can I ask you maybe to make a comment? Did you hear the question okay?
No, actually, I had acoustically a problem. Could you please bring the question back to me? Relay the question once more.
Maybe if I revert, I can do it from here more if you're okay.
Oh, yes, that's
yeah.
fine.
What are the consequences of breaching people's human rights regarding sufficient quality of healthcare related to helping people struggling with drug use?
All right. So I understand the question goes into the direction what remedies and what legal consequences are there if there is a breach, right? Well,
sure.
First of all, you have, as I pointed out, you have the ability to seek legal remedy. As Ireland, for instance, to stay with your example, like any other member state of the Council of Europe, is obliged to implement the Convention on Human Rights and the case law of the court. It means you can, under your national jurisdiction, challenge any decision not to grant you treatment or where you feel the treatment has been insufficient. You can challenge your health authorities in the national court. And if the decision by that very court is not in your favor, you can then challenge this decision directly as an individual at the European Court of Human Rights. The only prerequisite is that you have exhausted the national course of legal action first. And as a consequence, this can be, the court can render, can establish that there was insufficient medical care and a violation of the access to healthcare or quality of healthcare, which can result in civil damages to be paid, and making the government or making the authorities, giving them a legal obligation to actually change and provide you with that treatment.
Thank you, Thomas. I think Breda on table 10 has a nice, sharp, focused question that I'll put to Owen. So go ahead, Breda.
Hi, Owen. Lots of information you gave us. I just have a quick question. What is the ESCAPE project? You mentioned that at one point.
Yeah, the ESCAPE project, and I believe there's work going on to look into this type of analysis in Ireland. It's something that I believe they're considering for funding in the future. It's basically taking syringes that have been used to inject a drug by somebody, and they've been returned to a needle and syringe exchange program, which is an established harm reduction method to reduce bloodborne viruses and other issues, and also link people to testing and onto other services. And what they do is they analyze the contents of a selection of syringes to see what type of substances people are actually taking. So somebody might think they've taken an opioid, but they might not know exactly what type of opioid they've taken, or they might have taken a stimulant, and they might be unclear about what type of stimulant it is. It might be different, like I mentioned, synthetic catenones. They may not really realize that that's exactly what they've been sold. So the syringe residue analysis will show through laboratory examination what was actually present in the syringe, whether it was one drug, what was it, and a number of other drugs. So we can take away from this what's actually available on the drug market at a local level, because this is something that wouldn't be done nationally or regionally even. It would just be on a small scale in a sentinel location, probably in a large city in the relevant country, experiencing the worst parameters of the national drug problem. And it would then give you an insight into perhaps how services may need to think about responding to what's available on the drug market. That will be the purpose of doing that syringe exchange analysis. So it's not representative of the drug market of the whole. It's a sentinel, leading edge, almost real-time feel for what people are gaining access to.
Thank you, Owen. And Michael on table 12, I think it will be a question for Thomas, if I can, Michael. Hopefully you can hear us, Thomas.
Thank you. My question is in relation to the 20% of inmates at this moment that are currently drug users. The question I have is, what percentage of that 20 to 22% were drug users prior to being incarcerated?
So Thomas, have you got the gist of that question? So the 20% figure, you had reference?
I've perfectly understood the question, but I cannot. I have no figures that I can provide you with. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Maybe the colleagues from EMCD have figures on this, but we don't.
Okay. So you heard the question, but we don't know the answer, and that's okay too.
But what I can say is the following. We know that in the prison system, drugs very often are more readily available than outside the prison system. We keep hearing that. Secondly, yes, it is true. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence from cases that people have been initiated into drug use by the criminal networks inside the prison. And those people have not used drugs before, but they were coerced into drug use to become new customers. That is definitely a phenomenon which exists. I think it will be very hard to measure that statistically. What we are proposing, and we have in some countries made pilot projects, is that not only to have what is called drug-free wards in prisons, so to separate inmates who come into prison without prior drug use, not to mix them, but also that we establish therapeutic communities inside prisons, separate from other prison wards, where we actually offer exit strategies for those prisoners who would like to escape the continued, sometimes quasi-coerced supply on their addiction.
Thank you, Thomas. And we will, during the procedures, get some facts for the members around percentages of prisoners in Ireland in terms of drug use. So I know myself and Cathal had some discussion around that, and I think it might be significantly more than 20%, but we'll get some data on that. Can I just ask Brian on firstly, Kerry on table 3 has an interesting question around some of the references made to Germany, Czechoslovakia and Malta and changing policies. Kerry on table 3.
Just there was a comment that there was going to be adjustments to existing policies. Dr. Quigley? You mentioned that I think Germany, Czechia and the Netherlands, I think, or some European countries were going to make adjustments to their policies around cannabis use, and just what those adjustments were, if you could comment a little bit further on that.
Yeah, so these 5 countries, like all EU member states, have cannabis policies and legislation, and at the moment there are proposals to look into how they might adjust their approach to cannabis, specifically recreational cannabis. What they might do is kind of a mix of 2 things. They may establish state-regulated supply, or they may allow some type of home growing as well, or one or the other. It tends to vary in the proposals across the countries. The most recent proposal has been in Czechia. They've just launched their latest National Drug Strategy Action Plan, and it contains a proposal to look into this. Malta has allowed it so far for some home growing. The rest of the countries, Luxembourg, Germany, Czechia, these are proposals at present, but they're evolving. If you look at the Netherlands, they're running an experiment about potentially operating a closed supply for cannabis coffee shops. So cannabis is de facto legalized in the Netherlands. You've probably heard of cannabis coffee shops. So it is criminal. It is not de jure, de facto legalization. So there are retail, but the production of the drug is what's referred to as the backdoor problem, because it still comes from the illegal market rather than from a regulated state supply. So that was identified as an issue by the Dutch government that they'd like to see addressed through an experiment which is currently running for the next few years, and it'll be monitored and evaluated in terms of the effects of how that might operate.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Owen. And final question, and before we just, and I will ask Owen, just it'll be for Owen. It's from Brian at Table 1, but if we can just give the summary responses to it, because we're coming to a break. So Brian on Table 1, please.
Hi, Owen, just a question for you. Have drug seizures had a meaningful impact on reducing supply in Europe? And what can be done to fill the gap when original supplies have been seized? And what is happening to the products that are being seized as well?
I'm not sure I understood the middle bit of the question.
So have drug seizures had a meaningful impact on reducing the supply in Europe? What can be done to fill the gap when original supplies have been seized? And also, what is happening with the supplies that are being seized?
I think the first thing that we have to do when we look at drug seizures is remind ourselves about what they tell us. So they can largely reflect policing priorities and resources. They're not really directly telling us exactly, how much maybe is being there. We might get a feeling for it, but there's an old adage that maybe 10% is seized. If you focus intensely on the trafficking, then you'll seize a lot more. So an example would be a present in the port of Antwerp, where there's a lot of cocaine being seized and detected by the police. That's largely a result of intensification of that. So if you look more, if you're financed, resourced more, you'll seize more. So is it effective? If you have the resources to go after it and you're seizing, yes, it's effective. It certainly is. The police do fantastic work and also dismantling production facilities. So it is a key part of the response is to interdict, to seize drugs that are being trafficked, and they bring a range of negative consequences. The last part of the question, I believe, is about what happens to the drugs. They're destroyed, so they will be incinerated usually. Was there a bit that I missed, or is that answering you?
We'll have to hold it at that for now. Can I just say to everyone, we're just coming to our break now. Just a couple of points to make. First of all, the questions that have come in from the tables are excellent. They really are of a high quality, so we don't do justice to them in this short space and time. As I said yesterday, what we will be providing are responses to each of the questions for you in the members folder, which some of them can take a few days to get or up to a week to get, because we have to go out to the individual agencies responsible for the delivery of some of the service that you posed the question for. But we'll keep updating, if you like, as we get responses in for you to see them, because they really are getting to the core. And some of them mightn't have been for Thomas, Giovanna or for Owen, but they're getting to the core of some of the issues that you really want to get behind. So, we don't do justice to them here. We will get responses for you, and you will see them in the members' folders as we move on.
Could I just mention, we've mentioned several times the members area of the website, which actually hasn't been launched yet, but early next week we'll send you out an email with details of how you can log in and start accessing resources.
Yeah, thanks. So just as you go to your break, I'm going to ask you again to continue to bear with us. If you get back 2 minutes before your 15-minute break, we'll play the video. And it is from Owen's organisation, the European Monitoring Centre for Drugs and Drug Addiction, and it's a 3.5 minute video that sets out some of the concepts that we've been talking about the last couple of days, and we can come back to it again later. Thank you.